Game 2 is here. What do the Pacers need to do better? What lessons can they take from Game 1? What key moments from Game 1 suggest that Game 2 could be better or worse for the Pacers? We're going to break down all of that today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Sunday. It's Game 2 day, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, in my hotel room, one more time in Oklahoma City before Pacers Thunder Game 2 on Sunday night at 8. So much to get to looking back at Game 1, blending some thoughts from the second practice day of the finals, heading into Game 2, hitting the big topics that plagued the Pacers, stuff they did well. I want to talk about some stuff that I would have talked about had the Pacers lost Game 1, because I had a lot of notes ready for that podcast until Tyrese Haliburton said, hey, let's do cool things and make that not matter, and so much more. Today, quite the run the Pacers are on, and Game 2, a chance for them to, for the fourth time and final of this playoffs, be up 2-0 in a series. They have never been tied in a series after it started this playoffs. Can they do it again tonight? The key thing will be the thing that everybody's talked about on every podcast since the game ended: turnovers. Look, I don't want to belabor a point that's been made a million times, but I have to make it again. And I'm probably going to make it after Game 2, and I'm going to make it on next month. And you're going to hear this over and over and over and over and over. And it needs to be said a lot. One, because it is a thing that actually matters a great deal for the Pacers, obviously. But two, it needs to match the way the Pacers are talking about it. What I mean by that is something I said leading up to the series. The Thunder beat the Wolves. The Wolves talked about turnovers a lot, and they kept turning it over. The Pacers talked about turnovers a lot. They knew they needed to avoid them. Guess what they did in Game 1? So let's start there, of course. Obi Toppin called the Thunder defense annoying before the series. A lot of guys today talking about just how the pressure and the rim presence of OKC makes it hard to avoid turnovers, right? You're seeing bodies, you're turning to do something else. They're all over you. The passes are harder. The space is smaller. It's tough to do. They have to cut them down. Like, that is the number one key to Game 1. In fact, on my rewatch of the game, like, I forgot how bad it was in the first half. I knew it was awful. Let me read you. In fact, let me read you through. I don't even know if this is going to work, but I want to count how many notes I took during Game 1. 23 that I kept for a podcast. It's usually more than that, and I delete stupid stuff. 23. Of those 23, 6 of them were turnover related. First one, already 3 turnovers halfway through the first quarter. That pace would have been for 24, which is what the Pacers ended up with. 7 turnovers in 9 minutes. Like, I just forgot how fast, once Siakam came out of the game, that it just boom, after another, after another, after another, because Toppin came in and threw it all over the gym. Turnovers and stupid fouls in that first quarter. There was just a lack of discipline early for the Pacers. So in some ways, you could say, well, easy to clean up. The discipline's there. They've had a day of film. On the other hand, it'd be very easy to say, well, dang, this is just what the Thunder do, even with prep. We'll see where this turns out. But the Thunder took 9 more shots in the first quarter. Then the Pacers got to 15 turnovers like halfway through the second quarter. And I put in my notes, I don't know that I've really thought this through. I need to look through a lot more in more detail of how the Pacers were turning it over. But they would have a lot where they would be in the half court and they'd be dribbling and they would turn while dribbling. And they wouldn't move. They would just turn to face something else. You can't do that. Like Alex Caruso or Cason Wallace or anyone's just going to sneak up behind you in 2 steps because they're so tight. They're on a string. Like Ben Shepherd said, they're ready to pounce. They're right there. They're just going to take 2 steps and steal it before you get off the ball. So if you're going to turn, you have to do something. Throw it, move. You just have to move. And so that is the thing that will matter the most in Game 2 to me is, can they clean up the turnovers? Because, again, per play, they played better. Per play that finished with a shot, I should say. Pacers shot 47.6%. That's 8% better than the Thunder. 15 to 21 in free throws. Pacers easily made up for that with their rebounding and, of course, shot way better. If you eliminate turnovers from the game, which obviously if you eliminate something very significant, the result will be much different. I'm not saying that you can just do that, but like that was the difference for a lot of the game. The Pacers per possession that ended with a shot effectiveness was way better. We'll see if that part holds in game 2. The Thunder's offense is better than I think it showed in game 1, especially when it comes to Chet and J-Dub. But turnovers are a huge thing. So can the Pacers chop that number down in game 2? And especially the ones that Derek mentioned that I've like offhand brought up the last couple days. The Pacers had 24 turnovers. It's obviously a lot. I don't need to reiterate that point. The Thunder only had 14 steals, and only sounds hilarious there because that's a lot of steals. But that only is relevant because of the 24 turnovers. That means 10 of them were not OKC actually taking the ball. It was an offensive foul. It was launching it across the court or into the backcourt, which they did 5 times in the game. So I hate to keep talking about the exact same topic, but the details are important there. Turnovers, huge thing. The Pacers have to cut them down, whether that's playing calm, whether that's playing smarter, whatever it is, they have to clean that up. I know that everybody's talked about it. It needs to be said one more time. It's the number one thing that the Pacers have to change in game 2. The other thing I think from game 1 that I would have talked about a lot had they lost is how many sequences felt significant at the time to me that I wonder how that will hold into game 2 in terms of just game momentum shaking plays that happened, right? These are not in chronological order. I wish they were, but 4-point game, 4:30 to go. Pacers ball, Myles Turner, wide open 3. Miss on the other end, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Tough for most people, easy for his standards. Layup, 5-point swing on a wide open shot, right? They needed that. That's a weird way to talk about swings. That's just a miss into a make, but that was a big sequence, right? If that goes the other way, it's a 1-point game. The Shai 3 to close the third quarter. Huge shot. Pacers running a bit, catching up, making everybody wonder, ooh, could they get back into this? What's this going to look like? At the time, it was a 9-point game, 6-point game after Siakam 3, bang, Shai 3 right before the buzzer. Huge shot. How does the fourth quarter look if that doesn't go in? The missed bunny to McConnell turnover that put the Thunder up 15 sequence was just very painful for the Pacers, who had chipped into it, like I said, late in the third when they got it to 6. The fourth quarter starts with some Thunder dominance. It's 79-92. TJ McConnell gets a steal. Siakam has a shot at the rim. Misses. Ben Mathurin's there. Gets the rebound. Misses. It goes out of bounds. I think Mathurin might have missed twice. It goes out of bounds. Pacers are inbounding. McConnell throws it the length of the floor for J-Dub, who dunks it. And that's when it got to 15 and the Pacers took a timeout. Huge stretch there. Another one earlier. Aaron Nesmith, layup stopped at the rim. Masterful block by the Thunder defense. SGA scores on the other end. Beating his own. Beating more Pacers tough defense. Lost my train of thought there. Another huge swing. I literally put that one as huge swing in my notes. That was the first one, I think, chronologically. In the Pacers' favor, the Siakam free throw with a lane violation that he gets another chance at and makes. That 1 point ends up mattering quite a bit. A lot of this game had many sequences like that were just momentum shifting plays that you wonder one way or the other how that could matter in game 2. Obviously, every game has stuff like that, but it felt like a lot of those were just crushing for the Pacers. If they can kind of stabilize those moments, right, of just making stupid plays that get in their own way, I think they'll feel a lot better in game 2 and not feel like they lose grip of momentum so much, right? They were down, I mean, pick your numbers, but off the top of my head, 8-12, like the whole game, it felt like, because of stuff like that. Every time they had chances to make it closer, something would go wrong or the Thunder would capitalize. And that's not even saying like a big negative on the Pacers. That's a big credit to the Thunder for capitalizing on those moments. But I forgot until the rewatch just how many times it felt like there was just a huge swing of momentum towards OKC. And that's what good teams can do. And that's what home teams can do. And that's what the finals are all about. But I wonder going into game 2 if that number can be limited, including the Siakam free throw, right? That ends up being so huge. So that'll be something to keep an eye on in game 2. Can the Pacers kind of keep momentum together? More notes to run through. Thunder go small equals Pacers go small. That was my note in the first half, and that was my notes in the second half, which is relevant because many thought, including me, this series would be more about the bigs, right? I wondered if Isaiah Hartenstein would start, and he didn't, but I didn't think they would never go double big. 0 minutes of Chet Hartenstein. I thought Rylan Stiles made a great point when he said that Pacers haven't seen that group the whole season, right? Because they didn't play in the regular season to have that option with Chet, period, right? Because he missed every game they played in the regular season. So they haven't gone against that alignment. And I kind of get the hesitancy, like against a spread out team. Someone's guarding someone tough. And we saw against the Cavs how much the Pacers can really punish when they get something they like against the big in those matchups. But in game one, you saw the inverse, right? A very consistent source of Pacers offense, and we'll talk about this later, was Pascal Siakam against Smalls. This happens quite a bit throughout the playoffs. And sometimes what teams do is they'll figure out how to scram out of that. And then Myles Turner ends up being the one as the series progresses who has success against Smalls. So I wonder how much the Thunder can actually decide what to do with that. And this does go back to the bigs or the way they're kind of handling this small ball stuff, even with no centers or fours. So what interests me about the small versus small lineups is the Pacers did very well in those, right? Obviously, famously, the close of the game was Top and Siakam in the front court against no center. For the Thunder, I wonder if the Thunder are willing to go back to that, but they still deal with the problems of Siakam or Turner against Case and Wallace or whoever. Caruso has shown he can guard bigs. So one, I wonder if double big pops up in game two, period, right? I don't think the Pacers can't handle it, but I wonder if the Thunder go to that look instead of, their Kenrich Williams look here, their AJ Mitchell look there, whatever they can do to sprinkle that in, just give a new look to the Pacers, see how it goes, right? Mark Daigneault's a feel-out coach early in these series. I wonder if he could just try it, but obviously it's the finals, right? If it goes wrong, it's a disaster. Or two, if they just don't go to the no center minutes, right? That requires Chet playing better. Myles Turner did a great job in that matchup. I think he can keep doing that. Obviously, I expect Chet to be better in future games of the series. But, if they go one of Chet or Hartenstein the whole game, like when Hartenstein was out there, the Thunder's rebounding was better, for example. Chet can provide 5-out spacing. If that makes it so the Pacers can't dominate those small groups or whatever. There's another aspect of that I just mentioned that I want to get back to with Pascal Siakam and so much more from game one heading into game two on this weekend of Locked On Pacers. Before we do any of that, we got to talk about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They have so many surprising insights that you can use to realize how much you're spending on things like food delivery. Now you can budget smarter, and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals managing money with your partner. Smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making me your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should, of course, be Locked On Thunder. I apologize for all the cuts in this episode. It's taking me forever to record. I have to keep pausing to cough. I'm still sick. I can't kick it. It's horrible. But not sick, the Pacers, who are playing well, and I wonder how much they'll be focused on thinking about how successful they were with Siakam scoring over guys like Case and Wallace or other smaller players on switches. That's the flip side of what I just talked about. When the Thunder have their bigs out there, they switch sometimes. It's a big on a guard. It's a small on Siakam, and he's scoring. And if you look at matchups, Pascal Siakam scores 7 times in the game, right? So early he was doing this that it was in my notes many times at the start of the game. Oh, look, he scored over a small. 2 of his makes over Shea, 2 of his makes against Chet, and 3 against Case and Wallace. So 5 of his 7 made shots come against guards, 2 against Chet, 1 against Caruso. If you want to count Caruso as a guard, 6 makes against guard-sized players. Right? Like that says a lot about where he found success. And the Thunder, you can't just not get into a matchup. Like if you're a switching team, you're a switching team. If that's the way the transition sequence lines up, it's just what happens. The Pacers did a good job with that, but Siakam did not score very well against his other matchups, right? So I'll be very curious how that kind of continues into game 2. It's been a threat for the Pacers the entire postseason, right? In earlier series, it was the flip side. where I wondered if Siakam could kill it against the smalls, against Cleveland, and instead it was the Pacers crushing against the bigs. So I think I say all this to say there's a lot of relationship thinking for Mark Daigneault and the Thunder about, well, if they go big, they risk the first thing I said before the break of these bigs could run into trouble defending guards. Chet's a good defender even on the perimeter. Hartenstein's a decent enough defender, as the Pacers saw last year in that Knicks series and even in game one. But like that's a favorable thing. Like Jared Allen's a decent defender too. The Pacers had their way with him. Or if they keep going big, they run into situations where someone small will end up on Siakam every so often. And the Pacers did a good job getting him the ball. Not a great job, which I'll get to in a second, but a pretty good job getting him the ball against those matchups. So that's part of this discussion that will be constant throughout the series, is just can the Thunder lineups take away that kind of stuff that's been working really well? Because the other part of this early was Lou Dort was everywhere on defense, right? He defended Haliburton very well. He was all over the glass. He's just a monster, right? They call him the torture chamber for a reason. He was so disruptive at times that he was actually preventing good entry passes and like making those become turnovers by either tipping them or like slowing them down in a way that let the person guarding the post up get a steal, right? That's another counter for the Thunder, is just if they use their monster defensive groups and can just make those entry passes to Siakam harder, they won't be so afraid of getting the switches. So my guess is that they favor being okay with their plan from game one and don't just reactively go double big for extended stretches or anything like that just because of Pascal. But keep an eye on how Siakam specifically and him being a matchup issue continues to be a theme in the series. Like, it's not a secret to me that, or anyone, that the best two Pacers player, not the best two Pacers players, what am I saying? The two Pacers players who had a lot of success are, 6'9", 6'8", rangy kind of forwards. Like, that's kind of the only thing OKC is truly, air quotes, missing, right? They don't not have size on the wings, but Aaron Gordon was good against them. Julius Randle had some heaters. They were with shooting and didn't have like the interior success, but had an okay series. Gordon was amazing. MPJ was shooting well at times in the series, even though he only had one shoulder. Right in the first round, the Memphis didn't have anybody really of this variety who can go crazy, but like Santi Aldama had some nice games. I bring this up to say Siakam and Toppin are the size of guys that can have success against this team, especially when they're both in the front court. But I mean, in general, they both had nice games. Toppins was more because of three-point shooting. Regardless, they can do damage against this team. It's up to the Thunder to kind of figure out the right solutions to stop the Pacers. And so I found that balance between the bigs and the smalls very interesting. Myles Turner defended Chet Holmgren masterfully. Even watching the game back, Turner struggles early at many things, like his catches in the paint were a mess. So he had 6 turnovers. Him being the leader in turnovers is crazy, but he had 3 blocks. He had 9 boards. He had 5 offensive rebounds, and Chet really struggled against him. I'm not sure how much that can really hold for like a whole series. I'm not saying Chet's going to like be awesome all of a sudden, but Chet goes 1 for 7 with Myles Turner as his closest defender in game one, according to the matchup data. And he went 2 for 9 in the game. So he went 1 for 2 on the rest of his shots. Look, Chet Holmgren's great, like a great player. People refer to him as one of the big 3 with J-Dub and Shea for this Thunder team. Myles is uniquely challenging for him in that he can also provide 5-out threats and is just strong enough to kind of be a menace in the paint, and Turner can move a little bit. Like, he just handled it very well. I think Chet will be better, but I think the Pacers need to feel good about that, the fact that Turner can do well in that matchup. I think Chet might set some more screens in game 2, try to make him more of a movement threat, try to get him more involved in other ways, but Turner doing so well in that matchup was a huge part of game 1 and is a matchup to keep an eye on, continuing to go forward in game 2. 2 other things. That one happened during bench minutes, so it's a bench note, but there's a lot more to this. There was a point in the game in the third quarter where Siakam kind of burped up a tough runner, and it's just a shot that I thought in the moment, and I put it in my notes to like go back and look at, and then you go back and watch the game. Sure enough, there it is again. That's just not really a shot you see him take that much. And it was pretty early in the third, if I recall. And then he had another tough turnaround late in the third. And Pascal Siakam had an awesome game. I'm not saying his shot selection was bad necessarily. It was just a shot I don't remember seeing him force up that much. And I think that kind of speaks to the Thunder defense when the Thunder defense is at their absolute best, that sometimes the Pacers feel like taking a tougher shot with one of their best players is a good outcome. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on and remember, as this series progresses, is there might be, in the trade-off of not having turnovers, some possessions that go deep into the clock or end up with a tough shot. And that's sort of a consequence of that. This lineup, the lineup on the floor when Siakam took that shot, oh my gosh, was a bench group, and the bench was not good. in game one, like on the whole, right? Obi Toppin was good. He was plus 13, but lineups that have typically at least been table setting enough for the Pacers, the Shepherd, McConnell, Mathurin, Bryant plus Siakam group, that I know everybody always says this group stinks. Why does Rick have it out there? He should sub earlier. And I think it should be more with 3 bench guys on the floor instead of 4. But like, obviously it's part of a rotation and the starters come in and they do well. And guess what they did in that game? There's no reason to complain about that specific lineup again, but people keep doing it. Regardless, it was not good in the game. That group has been better than that. And they had good performances in it, right? Thomas Bryant didn't miss. TJ McConnell was 4 for 6. Siakam was quite good. That group needs to find something, right? Whether it's a way to up their tempo, whether it's a way to score in the paint, because they have less shooting on the floor than basically any other line that the Pacers are going to play in. So maybe the answer is just don't play it as much, right? Get the shooters out there, go against everything I'm saying, break up the rotation to get Nesmith with that group. That's something I advocated for in the Knicks series, right? Get Turner with that group and play Bryant at different times, whatever it takes. Like maybe that's something they look to do just because groups with less shooting are even worse than normal against the Thunder. But that's just something to keep an eye on. Is in the Knicks series, I mentioned this in the Why the Pacers Won the Series podcast after it ended. Siakam plus the bench was good. Like those were very, very potent lineups. If those can't be as threatening in the series, they got to think about changing up the way that they get the balance on the floor with the reserve guys, whether it comes from different shooters, whether it comes from just not playing as much at all, or they're just better, right? That helps a lot because I think it is important to this team that they're able to get the starters out there with rest, but you can't do that if those groups stink and can't play quite as much, right? So we'll see how the Pacers decide to handle that. If they do make any significant rotation changes, I don't think they'll make anything huge, obviously, as the playoffs have told us. Matchup-wise, I thought the Pacers had it exactly right with Nesmith on J-Dub, Haliburton on Case and Wallace, Siakam on Lou Dort, Turner on Chet Holmgren, and Nembhard on SGA to open the game. I think if they start Caruso instead of Case and Wallace, perfect. Tyrese Haliburton can stay right there. It's easy peasy. If, of course, Isaiah Hartenstein comes in there, I think you'd see Siakam take one of Turner or Hartenstein, and then Haliburton move to Lou Dort. That's what I thought before the series, but I thought the Pacers made the right choices with those lineups. I didn't think that anything that happened poorly for them defensively was because of the choices they made in those groups. So if the lineups change, keep an eye on what could be different, but I thought the Pacers did the right thing there. That'll be worth keeping an eye on in game 2, just if the Thunder decide to change their lineup. But other than that, I think game 2 is going to be about proving what from game 1 was real and what wasn't. Which half was the one that is actually the story of the game? Was it the second half where the Pacers were better and didn't turn it over as much? Can they do that again, right? If they come out in the first half and are a low turnover team and are up 4 or 5, whatever, that'll be 4 out of 6 quarters where they were the better team. Is that telling? Or will the first half again be about welcome to Loud City, the boom of the Thunder defense, Brick Town, forcing bricks and turnovers? And then will the second half of game 1 feel like the outlier? That will be a big story. I know the Pacers were locked into the details. I saw them celebrating like crazy when Siakam got an offensive rebound putback. They knew the little things were important. That was during the third quarter. Right after that, Jenny Busick is providing all these instructions to Siakam, and one of the bigs, I can't remember, on the bench, right? They were all about the details, and they were all about the complete possessions, right? Finishing possessions, no turnovers, no falling asleep on defense. And unfortunately for the Pacers, that was not, a consistent thing for them in the game, is the details and completing possessions. But they are in finals mode. They're locked into that kind of stuff. If you watch the bench, you'll see it. If you watch the Pacers play, you'll see it. There's a lot that can be better at. That's where the details lie, and that is what will be worth keeping an eye on in game 2. My voice will probably not let me continue doing this podcast for much longer. There's many pauses. You YouTube watchers will see my face like jerk around a million times as I pause and unpause the recording. It's time to wrap it up. Hopefully tomorrow things are better. For game 2's post-game show, Derek Kramer has left Oklahoma City, so it'll be just me post-game, unless it's a crazy game. If it's nuts again, he'll be back. If not, just me at the end of game 2, and then we'll flow into the Indy part of the series from there. Thank you guys for listening today. Hope you've been enjoying the interviews that can be posted on this channel during the finals of some players from both sides talking about the series at practice days. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East, and this podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. I'm on Blue Sky at Tony R. East. This podcast is on Instagram at Locked On Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening today. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. We'll see you after game 2.